The Washington, D.C. commuter rail system is fragmented. You have MARC running to Maryland and VRE running to Virginia. But what if we could have trains running from Maryland to Virginia and back? Through-running ideas like this have been proposed for years, and now there is actually some progress being made towards this goal. But today, we're going to talk about the problems that need to be solved before we can have MARC and VRE through-running. Washington, D.C. is famous for many things, and if you've spent any amount of time on the transit side of the internet, and let's face it, you're already here, you'll probably have heard lots of praise for our metro system. It's true, the metro is great, coverage is decent, frequencies are good, and the architecture puts it in a class by itself. But compare the metro to DC's commuter rail, or regional rail, suburban rail, whatever you want to call it, and we're faced with the reality that it's pretty bad. For a city of 700,000 and a region of 6 million, there are only 5 lines. What's worse, they're not run by a single entity. 2 lines are run by the Virginia Railway Express, VRE, and the other 3 are run by Maryland Area Rail Commuter, MARC. They have different schedules, different ticketing structures, different rules. It's not cohesive at all. The worst issue, though, is frequencies. 4 of the 5 lines only run during rush hour. The schedule of these lines is so bad that people kind of lift up the MARC Penn line as if it's some sort of role model, when in reality, it kind of just does the bare minimum of running in the afternoon and on the weekends. I wouldn't say it has a great schedule, just better than the others. So yes, currently there are a lot of things that could be significantly improved. But those improvements are coming. VRE and MARC are headed in a better direction. For example, the state of Virginia now owns the Manassas line, and they are building extra tracks on the Fredericksburg line, with the eventual goal of all-day service. And MARC, cash-strapped as they may be, they have presented a plan to significantly improve service on all 3 of their lines in the long term. An interesting tidbit in the MARC future plans is the proposal to start through-running with VRE. What do they mean by that? Through-running is the idea that trains coming in from Maryland would continue through Washington, D.C. and into Virginia, and vice versa. Specifically, in the MARC plan, through-running would mean MARC trains continuing down to Alexandria. Currently, all trains on all lines terminate at Washington, D.C. If you want to travel from a destination in Virginia to one in Maryland, you have to transfer. And as we've established, on a lot of these lines, there is no all-day service. So if you make it into D.C., chances are you'll be stuck there. Through-running is a practice used effectively all over the world. I like to bring up Tokyo as an example, but we don't even have to look very far away. Let's go to Philadelphia. In the city of brotherly love, a tunnel was dug underneath Center City to unite 2 previously separate commuter rail systems into one integrated regional rail system, with trains coming in from the suburbs, traveling through the tunnel, and then going back out into the suburbs. There are 2 main advantages to through-running. 1, it opens up more direct trips across the region. If we look back at the DMV, pretend you live in Laurel but work in Alexandria. Right now, any trip requires a transfer, extra walking, extra money spent, and no guaranteed connection. But through-running would mean a 1-seat ride and only 1 ticket. Second, through-running would also force the entire system to run all-day service. If a peak direction train is coming into DC and running through, well, by definition, it will be a reverse peak train on the other end. Even with recent return to office orders, the last few years have made it clear that there's a flaw in rush hour only transit. It's unsustainable for a train service to only serve one kind of traveler. It's unsustainable for the transit agency, but also for the entire region, because any non-commute trips have to be made by car. As such, I am a big proponent of through-running between MARC and VRE. If I could sketch my dream scenario, it would look something like this. I would love to see modern multiple units running frequently, completely integrated with the metro. Perhaps we could call it the Metro Express. Trains every few minutes from Maryland to Virginia and back again, and you can pay with your smart trip or credit card. Something like this is completely normal in many cities around the world. Ever heard of an S-Bahn? But unfortunately, I feel like this will never happen here in our lifetimes.
Now, I've done YouTube long enough to know that you can never make everybody happy. Whenever you're critical of something, people will say you complain too much. And whenever you're idealistic, people will call you naively optimistic. I don't think I'm either of those. I'm a guy who really likes public transportation and wants to make it better. Sometimes that means pointing out things that just aren't good enough. And I truly believe that sometimes it means being idealistic, because once you have an ideal scenario, your realistic goals are stepping stones towards that. In today's video, I've already done both of those. I've briefly explained why the current system isn't good enough, and I've explained what a perfect system would look like in my view. Now let's talk about what's realistic. Like I said, Mark has introduced the concept of through running, at least to Alexandria, as part of their future plan, which will start with 1 train per hour 15 years from now. I do think that that is incredibly unambitious, and you may hear that and think there's no way it would take 15 years to get that up and running. After all, through running doesn't on the surface seem to require any big infrastructure projects like it did in Philadelphia.
No new tunnels or anything. Washington Union Station already has through running tracks. Amtrak uses these every day, running trains from New York to destinations in Virginia and further south. And VRE uses them too, since they store trains in the Ivy City Yard on the north side of Union Station. So the tracks already exist, the tunnel already exists, and they're already being used. And nevertheless, if we actually wanted to have through-running commuter trains from Maryland to Virginia as quickly as possible, it would still take several years. Because unfortunately, it's not actually as simple as that. It's not just a matter of running trains through the station. There are some complexities that need to be resolved before this can actually happen. So for the rest of this video, I'm going to take a realistic look at the situation and explain to you the reasons why through running between Mark and VRE cannot just happen overnight. First, I'll talk about some bureaucratic obstacles before we move to some physical obstacles with the tracks and the stations that prevent this from being a reality today. Not to worry though, we can overcome these obstacles, and we will. There will be through running in the future, just not as quickly as we might like. So first, let's cover some of the bureaucratic hurdles. These are legal and organizational obstacles that exist on paper and do get in the way of implementing through running right away. So the commuter rail in Washington, D.C. is operated by 2 agencies, but also by 3 companies. So VRE in Virginia contracts Keolis to operate service, while in Maryland, the Mark Penn line is run by Amtrak, and the Camden and Brunswick lines are run by Alstom. Now, Keolis is banned from operating in Maryland due to their parent company's activities during World War II in Europe. Like I said, ideally you'd want a through-running service to be operated by 1 agency. But under US law, any agency that operates in multiple states would need to be an interstate compact, and to create one of those, you need permission from Congress. Now, there already is an interstate compact that operates train service between Maryland, DC, and Virginia. It's WMATA, also known as Metro. So the most logical solution would be to have commuter rail service be a division of WMATA. Then you don't need a new interstate compact. But joining WMATA isn't that easy either. WMATA is made up of participating jurisdictions, counties basically, and Mark and VRE run in several counties that are currently not part of the WMATA jurisdiction, like Baltimore, for example. So a bunch of counties that are not part of WMATA would have to join them first in order for Mark and VRE to become part of WMATA. That's not very likely to happen, unfortunately. So in the meantime, for through running to happen as 2 separate agencies, you'll need the Amtrak, Alstom, and Keolis crews to either get certified on each other's territory or to take over train service in Washington, D.C., which means both agencies will need to hire more people. Now, there are several ways that they could collaborate even as separate agencies. Think of shared branding, shared marketing, or a shared ticketing structure. I really think that they should adopt SmartTrip, which is what every other agency in the region already uses to let passengers pay their fare.
These bureaucratic hurdles are not insignificant, but they're not insurmountable either. With enough political willpower, they could change relatively quickly. But then you're stuck with the physical obstacles, things that take more time to be fixed because they necessitate construction. The first two of these are found on the VRE side of things. Between Washington Union Station and Alexandria, trains have to cross the Long Bridge. This bridge crosses the Potomac and is one of the most important pieces of infrastructure connecting the northeastern and southeastern United States. But it's old and at capacity. Currently, the bridge is shared between CSX, its owner, Amtrak, and VRE trains, and it's at 98% capacity during peak times. Any additional service, which through service would bring, requires a second bridge, which is being built. A new bridge will be built next to the current one, and the two tracks on the existing bridge will be used exclusively by CSX freight trains, while the new bridge will be used exclusively by passenger trains, Amtrak, VRE, and in the future, MARC. Construction of this new bridge is very exciting, definitely something that we will keep you up to date on here on the channel. Even with the new bridge and the new dedicated passenger tracks, there is still a major obstacle, and those are the stations at L'Enfant and Crystal City. See, if you're going to run MARC service from Maryland to Alexandria, you're going to want to stop here. At L'Enfant, there are a ton of government office buildings, and Crystal City is also a popular residential and office hub. But right now, both of these stations only have one platform serving one track. The schedule would be too tight to have all trains in all directions stop at these single platforms. In fact, even right now, VRE does run very limited reverse rush service, and these trains do not stop at Crystal City or L'Enfant for this very reason. The peak direction trains are using the platforms, the reverse peak direction trains just can't. So what you would need is new stations with platforms serving two tracks so that the stations can be used in both directions all day. Now luckily, VRE is building these stations in both locations. L'Enfant will have 4 tracks with an island platform serving 2 of them, as will Crystal City. In fact, the Crystal City station will also feature an Amtrak platform and a pedestrian walkway to the National Airport located nearby. The final hurdle may seem insignificant, but is actually the biggest obstacle to through service, and it has to do with platform height. In the United States, there are generally speaking 2 types of platforms. High platforms, which are raised quite a bit off the ground and provide level boarding with single-level passenger cars, as well as the middle floor of some double-deck passenger cars, and low platforms, which are basically at ground level and require passengers to step up into the passenger car. Some train types can only work with low-level platforms, such as Amtrak Superliner cars and the gallery cars that VRE uses.
Caution, the doors are about to close.
Other trains can use both, being level at high platforms and using door traps to let people step up at low platforms. All of the MARC cars can accommodate both, because every MARC line has some high platforms and some low platforms. The Penn line has almost all high platforms with only a few low ones. The Camden line is a mix of both, and the Brunswick line is all low platforms except for Union Station. VRE, like we just established, is all low platforms, and their rolling stock cannot even accommodate high platforms. So if you want to run trains from VRE territory into MARC territory, you're going to have to use MARC trains, because they're the only ones that can do both low and high platforms. And there's a problem with that. If you're running MARC service into Virginia, that's less train sets that are available for service into Maryland, so you would need to order more trains. However, there could be one solution that would prevent this. There's one line that could easily accommodate the VRE trains because they already exclusively use low platforms, and that's the Brunswick line. So the solution seems simple. Just run trains from Frederick and Martinsburg to Virginia, and don't worry about the MARC, Camden, and Penn lines. This doesn't work either. I mean, first of all, MARC will want to run trains from Baltimore to Virginia, But second, if you look at the track map right before Washington Union Station, you'll see that there's a conflict here. Brunswick Line trains join the Northeast Corridor coming from the west, but the through-running tracks at Union Station are all the way in the east. So if a Brunswick Line train coming from Silver Spring wants to go towards L'Enfant, it has to cross over the entire Northeast Corridor, which of course is a super busy intercity railway line. If you want any sort of regular service, this means that there are going to be conflicts all day, every day. Delays would cascade just because these MARC VRE through trains would be blocking all other service traveling in and out of Union Station. Alternatively, you could construct some sort of grade separation where the tracks fly over or dive under the Northeast Corridor. But this is expensive, not impossible, but significantly limited by the Washington, D.C. streetscape, because you've got New York Avenue crossing over the junction and several other streets crossing underneath it. Essentially, if you want all-day frequent through service between MARC or VRE, you could go the Brunswick Line route, which would require expensive infrastructure to be built around Union Station, or you could go the Camden and Penn Line routes, which would require more trains. MARC seems to be going that way. Specifically, they want to run Penn Line trains from Camden Station over a connecting track through BWI Airport in New Carrollton to Washington Union Station, and then down to Alexandria. To summarize this video, the Washington, D.C. area's commuter rail service is inadequate for a region this important. An easy way to make rail service better is to introduce through running, where trains run from Maryland through DC into Virginia and back. In an ideal scenario, this would be done by one unified operator. But because US law makes this difficult, and because the commuter rail service is already very fragmented, it is more likely that through running would be done through cooperation with the different agencies. Even when the decision is made to do so, there are some physical obstacles that prevent this from being implemented immediately. These include limited capacity at the Long Bridge crossing the Potomac River, stations with only one passenger track at L'Enfant and Crystal City, and the fact that different stations across the system have different platform heights, meaning that not all trains can run everywhere. All in all, these problems can and are being tackled, and in the future we will see MARC trains running in Virginia. It's up to us, as residents of this area and transit advocates, to keep applying pressure to the transit agencies to continue to improve service. If you enjoyed this video or learned something new, please subscribe to Trains Are Awesome. Who knows, you may be subscriber number 100,000. Thanks so much for watching today. We'll see you next time.